This is the Amp Hour Podcast, recorded May 18th, 2016, episode 299, an interview with Jonathan Hirschman of PCB.
Welcome to the Amp Hour. I'm Dave Jones from the EEV blog.
And I'm Chris Gamble of Contextual Electronics.
And I'm Jonathan Hirschman from PCB in Brooklyn, New York.
Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah.
You know,
Thanks
that's
for
where
joining us, Jonathan.
all the manufacturing is these days, right?
Yeah. Actually, we're the second ones.
The second.
We're the second electronics assembly company in Brooklyn.
Really? Oh,
Who's
that's
the other
interesting.
one?
Yeah.
Who's the other one?
The first one is a nice company called Refactory. And,
I know those guys.
Yeah.
Kennedy, Tom Kennedy? Sorry?
Yeah, nice guy.
Yeah. Yeah, that place is cool. Yeah, and I was actually surprised. I visited his place and I visited your place, and I was surprised. You know, I think New York, and you don't really think about industrial space, but then it's like, yeah, of course, Brooklyn. Like that's where a lot of original manufacturing was, right?
You know, as recently as actually just the pre-war period, so the 30s and into World War II, more than 50% of the economy in New York City was manufacturing.
Really?
Wow. See, I wouldn't, as a regular tourist who's just been there, you wouldn't think there's any manufacturing in New York. You just think it's 10 million depressed people living in apartments, you know?
That's a nice view of New York, Dave.
Those two things are not mutually exclusive.
Right, okay.
Right. They can also be depressed in factories, is that right?
I think the people that are doing manufacturing tend to be happier in general, but
Right.
yes. But
Because Adafruit are in Brooklyn as well, aren't they?
they're in Manhattan. They are really that's pretty wacky. They do their manufacturing in downtown Manhattan.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yep.
Right, just because of the relative costs of per square footage type of space. But yeah, that's just the choice that you can make, right, between different places.
Well, one of the things that, I have to say we were blessed with, in some respects, by Mayor Bloomberg. And what Mayor Bloomberg did during his tenure is he realized that he needed to diversify the economy of New York City. And so he started really pushing for a lot of initiatives to start to bring manufacturing back to the city.
Interesting.
Yeah, he figured it's not going to all happen with Wall Street and, real estate transfer taxes
Right.
forever. So that was a great thing that he did, and it's being continued by the current administration. So pretty cool.
So like tax breaks, stuff like that.
Energy subsidies.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that
is energy high price there? That it needed subsidies?
I was going to say that half of insanely expensive still equals insanely expensive.
Right. Okay. There you
Indeed,
go.
yes.
Yeah, I think that normally we would pay something like 8x compared to more traditional manufacturing areas in the country.
Come on out to
How
Ohio,
many-
buddy. Come on.
There you go. There you go.
How much? How many cents per kilowatt hour?
I think that depending on additional fees, it could range between 30 and 40 cents.
Whoa.
Oh yeah. And so
Well, I pay 26 cents at home here.
Wow.
that's pretty that's pretty expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, and if you're heating up like a reflow oven, that can add up pretty quick.
Oh,
huh?
yeah. Right.
Well, we had to be really careful about making those kind of choices because, we were looking at reflow ovens where they looked like wonderful units and great deals. And then we sat and we calculated the energy bite. And the energy cost could be for some of these ovens up to $10,000 a month.
A month?
A month.
Wow.
That would be for 20 shifts a month.
Aren't you glad that you
Wow.
actually did the calculations, huh?
Yeah.
Total
Yes.
cost of ownership, it's important.
Oh, yeah.
It
No,
is.
we're already in ROI land for sure with what we
nice.
chose. Yeah.
Oh, radio on internet, right?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Did we actually ask you what you're doing?
Well, so what we do is this. We, at PCB, we decided that making electronics, your own designs, getting them fully assembled, it should be just as easy as ordering a custom t-shirt or making a business card or maybe getting a 3D print done. It shouldn't be any harder than that.
So you are
So
the
it's a
Moo
floor-
/ Teespring /
Well,
Cheap place.
the one thing though is that if you look at the way that, say, Custom Ink or Mood does it, they make a really great front end so that you can easily order. But the truth is, and I'm sure they would disagree, but the truth is that printing a business card these days is not that difficult to do. So our challenge was not only to work on the front end aspect of things, but also to actually make actually fulfilling the order. Start to approach making that as easy as printing a business card, and that is a neat trick if you can do it. And we haven't quite gotten there yet, but we've definitely made it a lot easier than I think that other vendors, what their experience is.
Cool.
Have you actually released yet? Because I see that you have to, on your website, like you have to apply for an invite.
Well, that's interesting.
What's that about?
We have. Well, so one of the things that we're trying to do is. We're being really, really careful. I mean, when we're accepting money there's certain expectations when you're accepting money from clients. And so one of the things that we're trying to do is just be 100% sure that our software is not stepping on anyone's design or causing any problems. It hasn't kept people from joining. But one of the things that we've done to make it easier, and I'm about to give myself a little plug here, is that we do from time to time release certain codes that let you jump the line and not have to ask for an invite, but just go ahead and jump into the beta. And so one of those codes is the AMP hour.
Hey.
Okay. Or
sign up now, folks.
Or AMP hour will also work. And so effectively
spaces? No spaces?
No spaces. And so you head over to our site and hit redeem invite, and at that point it's just a question of putting in the code, your email address, and your desired password. I'm doing that
right now,
and you will be in minutes.
Oh well, I will come back in a few minutes and tell you if it worked.
Just hold tight, John. Everybody else listening, just hold tight. We're just retyping here for a second.
I've already tested it. It works.
Okay, the community code is the AMP hour. I've clicked redeem me. Hi there, thanks for joining. It's a beta. Delivery times 2 to 4
I really don't want to hear
layer,
Dave read through all this stuff. Like really, I really don't. John, why PCB NG? Let's while Dave's doing that. Why NG? What is that?
So well, and we found that there's a strange coincidence, a correlation maybe between people that love electronics and people that love Star Trek.
And if I'm more of a Star Wars person.
Okay, fair enough.
Yes, am I? Yep.
But nonetheless, certainly
Wookiee.
So NG is PCB next generation, and we've kind of adopted a very very mild science fiction themed identity. We haven't fully blown that out. One of the things that we actually have done is if you order electronics from us, you get we've been told, very humorous ESD warning stickers on the packaging. Okay. So there's
something to look forward to. That's a good teaser. That's good.
Extra incentive. There you go.
Yeah. Right.
Awesome.
He's also revolutionizing marketing for people buying assembled boards.
We're doing our best.
Good, man. That's good. So, where did this all come from? I mean, what's your background? Dave's still cranking through the demo. I'm sure.
I'm trying to upload a board.
That's
now,
okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. John, what's your background? How did you even get into this?
That's kind of it's an interesting story. So my last gig before I guess embarked on the path that got me to PCBNG, I was actually up until 2009, 2010 had never touched hardware, had never touched electronics, didn't know anything at all about it. I had sold my company, and I thought to myself, I really kind of want to do something very different with my life, and I really want to learn how to make physical things. And so I started teaching myself things like, SolidWorks and, how to, design electronics, and taught myself about some fundamentals and how to read a data sheet, how to lay out PCBs. I mean, it was kind of an iterative self-taught process. And I got good. I did well enough in my self-learning that I started getting requests from people like, hey, will you teach a class on how to design a PCB? Will you teach a class on how to do hand assembly? And I started giving classes where 30 or 40 people would show up, and they were all double E's. And it was that was really weird because I'm not an engineer. So the question that's when the first kernel started to perk. I started getting the question over and over again, like, where do I go to get this stuff made? I talk to people and it's like they're impossible to deal with. The prices are outrageous, on and on and on. And so during a project that I was doing, I got bit by that very issue, where I made the really, really silly assumption that just because you can say go to Shapeways and get a 3D print relatively quickly, relatively inexpensively, or you could go to Pinocchio and get stuff laser cut relatively cheaply, relatively quickly, the same would be true that somebody would do that for some electronics. And I was very, my naivete was quickly dispersed. And I realized that this was a great problem that needed to be solved. How do we make electronics assembly something that is really stress free and just a piece of cake, so that someone could get an order done in a couple of minutes?
Got it.
Well,
speaking of which, done in a couple of minutes, I have uploaded my microcurrent panel, and and it loaded, like, you upload your zip file, right, which contains all your Gerber files and your drill files and everything, and it detected all the Gerber files just fine, but unfortunately it didn't detect the drill file properly. It chose the wrong file, but I selected the right one, and it still doesn't do the preview. Boo-hoo, but it's given me a price.
We are in data, but I will definitely take a look and find out why you're having that issue.
And also I generate, there seems to be no provision for having two separate drill files. Because I've got two drill files, one for slots and one for round holes.
That is actually correct right now. And one of the things that we've been debating is the issue that we get into is that one of the ways that we're able to offer very inexpensive prices is kind of following the 80-20 rule, say the way that Proto Labs does. And one of the things that we're debating is what features should we allow and what features should we not. And so far, we're probably ultimately going to allow a separate routing file for But one of the issues that we get into is then what kinds of files do we accept and which files do we don't, because some software can create a proper routing path and some can't. And then our board vendors get really mad at us when we give them something that uses uses a deprecated thing. So one of the things that we were considering doing is allowing people to upload another assembly layer that would be the routing layer, and effectively just create the routing for them based on that. But it's something that is still in development.
Are we allowed to ask who your board manufacturers are?
We're not discussing that at this time, but there are multiple.
Multiple.
They're very capable.
Why multiple? You got ones for cheap and slow, and ones for fast and expensive.
No, because the thing is that what we found is that the board producers can be extremely variable, and being beholden
in terms of quality or a process or what?
Well, I mean, it's really strange. I mean, we have, one nameless, board house. They were our number one with a bullet because everything they did was just amazingly great. And then we started receiving orders from them that were, kind of subpar in that we would get, a number of panels, and one of them would be just completely unacceptable. And we actually got one panel from them where things were rotated within the panel. And so, we had, and the thing is, we got another order from them where, their routing just went kind of berserk, and we got misshaped boards. And so one of the, so the thing is, it's always good to keep them on their toes to some degree, and load balance the orders and just make sure that you're not beholden to somebody that is suddenly going to start slipping in quality. We've had other producers that were great, and then suddenly they decided they wanted to change the pricing that we had negotiated with them. So, we can never be 100% certain. We always need to have at least three. Yeah,
that makes sense. And that's just a negotiation tactic as well, right? I mean, then keeping the workflow going. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, the difficulty though is that there's the vast majority of the board folks we've talked to, we don't want to work with.
Right.
Because
you guys are focusing a lot on automation. I mean, are you seeing any automation on their side of things or no?
That's the interesting part, is that we're starting to see, the folks that we're talking to are the ones with the most clue. in that, they can actually grab files, off the cloud. That's actually a really hard thing to find.
that's the bar they have to jump over. That's a pretty low bar.
You'd be amazed.
Dropbox.
Right off the bat, that extinguishes most of them.
What cloud are we talking about here? We're talking about Dropbox.
I'm talking like Dropbox. Like send them a Dropbox URL. Send them.
And they can't do it.
If you could just fax us the Gerbers sheet by sheet, we'll have someone scan those in to transparencies.
I'll make this a nameless company to protect the guilty. But we were dealing with a vendor who insisted that every document they sent or that we sent to them had to be in RTF format. I mean, why?
Yeah.
I mean, why? Because that's how they've been doing it since the 80s, right?
Right. It's the same thing. Yep.
And so, we like to say that a lot of the vendors out there, and this is on the assembly side and on the board side, they're kind of stuck in the fax age. They've been doing that. That's where they kind of stopped evolving, technologically speaking. And not surprisingly, a lot of the software that they tend to use has largely stopped evolving as well. And that's why we've had to write so much of our own.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's good. I mean, it's good. And it's good that you guys are moving this forward. I mean, there's other people doing similar things, starting to see more similar things out there. And that's, I love it. We were talking, I think, before the show too, that like, I just don't want to talk to people. That is my main thing. I just don't want, I don't want a phone call.
Have to.
I don't want, email back. I just want to like everything. I want it to work, obviously, but like I just don't want to interact with people because that means that there's just friction in the process.
Well, what's funny is that we like to talk to at this time. We like to talk to folks if they're willing to, just so that we could get some feedback and we can incorporate it and kind of iterate.
But that's a product thing. That's not necessarily that's not
absolutely.
like a.
Absolutely. But some of the feedback that we get is interesting in that regard. I mean, I was talking to a gentleman recently and, he's been getting assembled electronics for 20 years. And when I told him like, hey, our paradigm is self-serve, the idea is that you're not going to talk to an engineer. You're going to upload it and the system is going to be smart enough to do what it has to do. And his response was, but I really like the whole concierge thing. I really like someone just doing it. And so the thing is that right now in electronics, there's and I hate, this is going to sound really terrible, and I don't mean this in a judgment way, but there's a janitorial layer right now in the way that it's done. And what that means is that there's an engineer that's taking the files that they're getting from users.
Oh yeah.
And they're fixing them because they're all invariably broken.
I think that there's even that. So like Dave, you do a lot of panels, right? But like even when we're up, when you upload something that's panel, like Oshpark panelizes stuff programmatically, but I think when they send it off to a board house, there might be someone there. But like anytime you send in a non-panelized board, someone is panelizing that for you. Like that is
of course.
That's just a reality.
Yeah.
There's someone there with a Gerber tool and they're just shoving stuff around and panelizing it, and like there's someone doing that. There is someone there. Same thing with assembly houses. There's people dealing with spreadsheets and doing that kind of stuff,
Well, I mean, I'll put it to you this way. We, as part of our research, we looked at almost every CAM package that was out there. And what we were really shocked to find out is that there wasn't a single package that you could buy from anybody where you could say, here are like 8 designs, make an array, a heterogeneous array, and automatically, tab route them without human intervention. And that, as far as I know, that still does not exist today. We had
commercial
because
software.
Because that's not is that a marketable thing? I mean,
right? You're selling that to a board house, you're saying, Dave?
I think it is actually a marketable thing because, I'll put it to you this way: none of them really actually will take a single design and automatically tab route without human intervention either.
That's right.
So, and that certainly is a marketable thing. So what we had to do was we had to write our own CAM system that would take designs and automatically, array them in a rational fashion, and then do put all those features on the board. And
so why don't you sell it?
Well, I mean, because I think the thing is, it's a remarkable competitive advantage. I'm not sure that necessarily anyone else actually. Maybe other people do have their own homegrown solutions, but I'm kind of thinking we might be.
I thought Oshpark had their own. Oshpark wrote their own solution, for example.
I honestly don't. I don't know if it does everything ours does.
Right.
Well,
I mean,
but there is some automation. No, I know there's automation there. Like Lane
absolutely,
was on the show talking about that. So
no, there would have to be. There would have to be. Yeah,
Yep.
no question. And maybe his is more sophisticated than ours. But what ours does is it does efficiency calculations. It puts certain proprietary features on the board that allow us to further automate. So our panels look. I mean, well, Chris, you saw them. I mean, they look kind of wacky compared to anyone else's panels.
They're very unique, and that is good though. Like there's added features that definitely help you out for other things. So it makes sense.
Hang on, I've got myself an error's popped up.
They were not live troubleshooting, man.
beta. No, it's still beta. Here we go. The outline layer is a collection of 11 unconnected line segments. We require the border of the PCB to be represented by a continuously connected path that makes up a valid polygon.
Did you do this design in an Altium product?
Yes.
Yes. Well, it's interesting because
There's your problem.
Well, no. I mean, we think Altium is a great company with great stuff, but at the same time, they have a different conception of what an outline layer is than pretty much anyone else.
Right.
So their outline layers are actually typically not actually contiguous, and this is something that we've been working through because at the end of the day, we have to support it. It has to just work.
Of course.
Right. Right.
And
you mentioned in general, just like all of the different, like aside from user differences and how they actually decide to put this stuff out, just all the CAD programs that are out there, there are all of these idiosyncrasies between them, right?
There is
maybe the manufacturers are manually tweaking. If I send them my Altium files with their board outlay, maybe they're just manually tweaking in the background, and I'd never know.
Yep, exactly.
I would actually
fixing it.
Well, I would actually say that's probably the case. But the thing is that in some, I mean, there are some. My guess is that they are dealing with some CAM packages that automatically deal with that. That's probably an issue they've been dealing with for a long time, and they kind of have some kind of
solution for it.
They probably have a thing where it's like if it's a certain there's a certain closeness between two disjointed points, it's going to assume it's closed, and that's along the lines of what we've been building. Clearly, we still have some bugs there. So, but I'll definitely look forward to looking at those files and seeing why we didn't succeed.
Yeah,
cool.
But so what are some of the you see a lot of different packages now, right? As you've got more people in your system, so some things just do it completely different, or it breaks your system, or how does it even work?
Well, I mean, I could talk about the stuff that has broken our system in the past.
Sure.
So one thing there was, and again, I'll try and since we love all the EDA packages out there.
I don't.
Well, that's okay. What we found is, there are some packages out there that whenever you do a copper pour, they use a painting technique instead of actually creating a polygon like they're supposed to. I mean, basically using a whole bunch of traces is way deprecated now.
Painting it's rasters back and forth to actually make a layer.
That's exact. Yes. So dip traces is the worst offender in that regard.
Right.
And so that's something that breaks. That broke us pretty badly for a while because trying to figure out what's contiguous and what's not, that actually becomes a pretty difficult program. Pretty difficult algorithm to write if you're basically stepping through every paintbrush stroke that someone did as part of their pour. We came up with a smarter way to deal with that, and actually we're going to be releasing that pretty soon with our next feature drop. So that's an example. We've seen a lot of packages that use zero-sized flashes for various functions. We've seen a lot of issues.
What does that mean? Sorry, I don't know. What that means.
The thing is that in a Gerber file, you can define just a polygon, but typically, like if you have a pad, it's what's known as a flash. It's a defined primitive. Effectively.
Oh, okay.
And so
a square, or it's a rectangle, and you define the sides instead of drawing a.
Exactly, and then you just keep on saying, okay, do this flash again and again and again for every pad. So the thing is that zero-sized flashes are actually legal, but they're not entirely a good idea, and they're kind of frowned upon in some regards. So that was giving us a lot of fits and starts. And, so there are a lot of, the fact that, Eagle is, I believe that I don't think KiCad, I don't think DipTrace. I mean, some of the lower end packages, they can't do a proper milling path. I mean, they just can't do it. They'll use a very, very deprecated, style of just defining two drill hits and effectively just, the commands cause it to do a million drill hits in between.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, the board houses really don't like that.
No, they don't.
So,
which they will fix that stuff manually before they put it through. Their CAM software will
like
flag
scrubbers
it
or something. Like
this is
depends on the board house. I mean, one of the things that we do is, we give folks, absolutely, airtight Exelon milling paths. Our stuff is beautiful from that perspective. And we have board houses that are like, well, can you give it to us in this other really weird format? And we typically frown on that and say, get with the times. It's industry standard. Deal with it.
Right.
Right.
And, so that's another interesting topic, though, too, is like, I know Gerbers and Exelon and that stuff's out there, but like, it's not really standard. That's the thing. Like, there's not like an IPC standard for how board files are sent, is there?
Gerber's, well, I mean, the thing is that's why
they tried to create, didn't they? Wasn't there some industry push to try and create a standardized thing at one point?
Oh, definitely. I mean, the thing is, ODB++, it is one option, and we're going to be supporting that pretty soon. But and then there's Gerber X2. Well, I don't think that's really getting traction. But really the default choice for everyone is zipping up the Gerbers and the NC drill files. And
it's okay. Keep going.
Yeah, that's right. I just sent a screen capture in the background because I got it. I got my board. Sorry, continue.
So the thing is that
you were saying ODB2 and Gerber X2.
Yeah, but ultimately, we're going to be in well, I can't see it because my Mac. Sorry, I'm not multitasking well right now.
See what you did, Dave? You broke it. You broke it, Dave.
Yep.
You broke my Mac. For the time being, it's going to be Gerber's plus drill files as the vast majority. Although you're starting to see, and this is something that we're not really thrilled about, is that people are just basically, doing an end around the whole issue and just saying we're just going to deal with native file formats. And I think that's actually a pretty bad idea for a lot of reasons.
Why is that?
Well, I mean, for one thing, the support burden for us right now is unsustainable because native proprietary or semi-proprietary file formats, they change with revisions. And so the testing, to do that is substantial. It doesn't mean that we're not going to do it. It just means that we're not going to do it right away. So that's one way to and other people have done that. But really, there just needs to be an interchange between all of these programs, and not just for output, not just for the equivalent of PostScript. There needs to be a common file format that everybody supports, so that I can take a file from Altium and load it into DipTrace or into KiCad or into Eagle. And I really think it would be to the advantage of a lot of the smaller guys if that happened, and yet they really just don't want to do that. So.
Yep. Yeah, they don't play nice together.
Well, the big players don't want to do that as well.
Well, and I think that, ultimately, you could do that with ODB++. You could do that. But
what is that again? So you mentioned that before. It's like a Gerber similar type thing, or what?
I hope I'm not having a brain fart right now and using the wrong acronym. But ODB++ is kind of like a superset of what you can put in it. Not only the different layer information and the different drill and milling information, but you could also put in netlists and all the good stuff that you really could recreate.
It says
a design.
It's proprietary CAD to CAM data exchange format. Wikipedia.
But it's not proprietary. It's actually something that a surprising number of packages are doing it for output, but none of them will do it for input.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Right. And
That's
it's like
weird.
this gentleman's agreement between all of them that we'll spit it out, but we won't digest it. And I think it's a terrible mistake, honestly. you know. But hey. What
Anyway, my board worked. I put in a different one, which is just a square board instead of a big complex panel with all sorts of routing paths and
there you go.
And crap like that. And yeah, it worked. Once again, I've got multiple drill files. Like I've got one that does square holes, which is actually like a routing path kind of thing, and it doesn't let me select that. But apart from that, it works beautifully, and the preview looks fantastic. How did you know that I wanted a red solder mask?
I mean, actually, we need to tweak the color because it's supposed to be our kind of blood red, our PCBNG red.
Right.
You know, so it's a little bit off these days, but yeah. That's one of the things that we do that I think, again, is kind of makes us heretics. You don't get to specify what your solder mask color is with us. You know, we have one stack. We have basically one choice for a stack up. If it works for you, that's awesome. If it doesn't, then you don't get to enjoy our really unbelievably low prices. And it's the same. I mean,
you said you're an engineer, not a salesman. Come on, man.
Well, I mean, the thing is
Call
that
today's low prices. Sunday.
Well, if you think about it, you know, in order to get to scale, it's a lot easier if you follow the Model T philosophy. Any color.
Of course, yeah.
But the other thing is that goes to the finish. I mean, you can only get Enig. You can't get anything else. Mm-hmm. It goes to the our trace and space specifications and on and on. It's like,
which is what?
For copper, it's 4 mil trace, 4 mil space.
Hey, nice.
Wow,
yeah.
That's nice.
We do an 8
2-layer, 4-layer.
We can do 2-layer and 4-layer right now. You get let's see, minimum drill hit is 8 mil. Annular ring is 5 mil.
Nice.
So you know, that's actually pretty tidy, but it's not necessarily great for people that are trying to do little BGAs. So
it's not a micro-via, but it's still it's not bad, right? I mean,
it's pretty decent. And the other thing is but again, some things are really standard. It's like 1 ounce copper outer layers, ½ ounce inner layers. We suggest but don't enforce copper to edge clearances. So we will do, castellations at your own peril.
Okay. Yep.
So what we found is that, all this stuff is sitting in our help files. And of course nobody reads those. And so what we've been getting is a lot of designs where people are looking for really advanced features, and they're not going to get them. Because one of the things that we started doing is, as a way to really bang on our on our Gerber parser, is we thought, hey, let's start to increase the volume. So for beta, we said to folks, hey, you know what? If you just want a PCB, we'll give you 6 copies, for $1 a square inch. So that's pretty inexpensive, and it's a pretty high quality PCB. And so we've been getting a lot of people taking advantage of that, which is great. The bad thing is we've been seeing things like, micro vias. And we've been seeing people that are looking for clearances of 1 mil. And
oh, wow.
yeah. And the thing
Time
is,
to review, folks. That's probably never going to happen with yeah.
Uh-huh.
So we've been working on this anyway, but it's just really spurred us to accelerate development, is that we're going to be introducing the first DFM layer that a system like this has, so that if you upload something that's going to cause you to shoot your toes off, we're going to either bounce the order in some cases, or eventually we'll allow you to fix it in our system.
Just fatten up some traces.
Well, no, we're never going to do that with copper. That's a bad idea. But
yeah.
But you don't want to be fixing your design at the board house.
That's right, because you export the exact same design next time, right?
Well, that's true.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, this is the thing. This is the dirty secret. If you upload something that, say, for instance, has mass clearances that are out of spec, the board house is going to fix it anyway. I mean,
Right, yes.
they may not tell you, but you probably won't notice because it
Correct.
probably will be just fine. But if you have masked livers, they're going to fix it. If all kinds of things. If your annular ring is too small, they may actually ask. In some cases, they'll just fatten it up.
I've had that, and they've shorted out things, or they've actually removed copper fill between the traces because they expanded my annular ring. So I just lost my ground plane connection.
Well, we had something worse. We had something that was really annoying. I mean, one of the things that we do is we have certain features on our board that, again, help our manufacturing in ways that I'm going to remain purposely vague about. But some of those involved, exposed copper. And so one of our providers thought it would be a really great idea for them to just arbitrarily put their logo over what they thought were just useless features. And so we get the stuff and it's like, oh, our system's not running really well. Why is that? Oh, let's see. We're expecting copper there and there's silk and it's throwing things off. Yeah. And so, and literally the engineer, his response was, he's like, I don't see the problem. That's a useless feature.
Useless feature.
And I said, that's the kind of thing that really, I
had a very similar one where they put a marking on there that was not showing in any of the previews, and it was like you didn't put that there. Like I don't know. Like if I wouldn't have paid up front with the credit card, I never would have paid the invoice because
one of my pet hates is when when you do like a PCB front panel.
Yeah.
And they think it's a board, and they put all logos and all sorts of other crap.
That's what mine was,
and information on the board on your silk screen. And it's like it's a front panel.
Yep.
Or it's a board that's used as a front panel.
We have some really, that's one of the things that we deal with vendors where we say, thou shall not do this, thou shall not do that, because we would never put our logo on someone else's design ever.
Right.
Although I scored a win here. I actually, a PCB house that I used to use, or I still do use them, I complained about this. And they said, that's a fair point. And they actually rejigged their quoting system. Now it has the option. They added in quite a few years ago. Now they have, do you wish us to put all these marks, on your overlay? Do you wish to add them?
Yeah.
Yes, no. Thank you very much,
Right.
And it's great. So they actually recognize that problem and they added it to their quote system.
Yeah, we're thinking of doing a few things along those lines where if you allow us to put our logo on, we may give you a discount, but we'll never insist on it. The other thing is that one of the things that we really, really want to encourage, and people think we're nuts about this. We really want to encourage people to do everything in metric.
Oh, nice. Interesting.
Because actually,
evil.
well.
You're going to have a lot of confused people, but if it's automated, right, you don't have to listen to them.
Well, the thing is, we accept it both ways, but the issue is, the real issue is that you'd be surprised that most of the pick and place machines out there, speak metric natively, and they convert from imperial, and so you get these cascading rounding errors. And so that's why we're like, we were thinking about, hey, wouldn't it be great to have like metric day where we give a discount for metric files?
Although you did give us your specs before in Imperial.
It's
true. Well,
4-4.
That is my audience, So
Oh yeah. Us uncouth users of mills.
Well, it's terrible because the thing is, and I think I'm probably like most certainly American users. I think in terms of the board features in mills. I think in terms of I think of passives in Imperial, and I think of ICs in metric. It's you're constantly jumping back and forth. It's kind of weird. So
any footprint is default metric, So.
Well, the new surface mount ones are. The old through-hole ones, that was all Imperial.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Yeah, sorry.
Headers and things like that.
Some of us make modern products, Dave. Come on.
Right. Okay.
One of the limitations of our system, or we think features, is that our policy on through-hole is that you can't have it.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Right.
We're surface mount only. That's it. If you have through-hole parts,
But headers and things. I mean, this is where you were talking about the start, where you would get people to sort of do some of it themselves, right? And it's through hole.
Well, what I was really talking about in terms of people doing things themselves is that our system, that as you progress through PCBNG and get closer to ordering, one of the stops you have to make is actually verifying all your parts placements. You have to you have to visually verify
diodes.
But I mean, the orientations, make sure that you're putting polarized stuff in the right way, ICs in the right orientation, and so that's something that we ask the users to do, because the truth is they know their design the best, and so they certainly know it a lot better than a pick and place operator. But in terms of through hole, what we're saying is, if you are using headers, we're saying, hey, you know what? Those are available surface mount too, and I understand there are some disadvantages to them.
Do you get refunds when those stupid surface mount headers get ripped off the board like they always do?
They only get ripped off if they're not staked down. If they're staked down, they're not coming off.
So you're saying that you can stake stuff down, but no through hole.
We do stake stuff down pretty routinely, where especially if it's obvious there's going to be physical stress, or if we're seeing that the user did a confounding user trick where they're likely to get
confounding user trick.
Yeah,
that's the nice way of saying idiotic mistakes that Chris makes.
Okay, I'm not saying that, but
that's okay. That's your job not to say that. I'm saying that. I can say that about myself.
If we see that somebody is using, for instance, we see this a lot where people use really strange pad sizes for standard parts for passives. We'll detect that and stake it down.
Interesting.
Because otherwise they're going to get tombstoning, they're going to get billboards, they're going to get all kinds of funny gymnastics during reflow.
What's billboarding? Is that when it goes on the side?
That's when it stands on the side.
Huh, never heard that.
Yep. And actually we've actually seen the strange phenomenon where I can't begin to tell you how this is happening, but we've seen passives that actually flip over during reflow.
No.
So,
I think
yes.
I've seen that once. Yes.
It's not common, but it definitely happens.
No. Yep.
You should call that what should you call that? Like the Greg Louganis, or I don't know.
I don't know. But I mean, we see a lot of other weirdness. Like, one of the things is that we were doing a design recently, and it was using a really standard passive. It was using it was just using an 0603 cap, that pretty standard bypass value, and the cap was out of spec for the physical size. It was actually more narrow than the 0603 cap is supposed to be. And this was from a major manufacturer. And it was surprising that...
But the cap was more narrow, or the footprint was more narrow?
No, the cap itself.
Oh, wow.
I'm sure they weren't just putting them 90 degrees instead of...
No. Well, I mean, I guess that is possible, that they were in the pockets, kind of rotated in the pocket. But yeah, we've seen weirdness like that. So
that's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
I want to go back to pricing for a second, because that is actually one of the things that you promote as one of your things. Is like, obviously we've heard about some of your automation stuff, but tell us about the actual pricing on, if we upload a design, how does this get priced right now?
Well, that's the interesting part. One thing that really has always irked us is if you go to, if you find an assembly outfit that has something that, a place where you could get some kind of quote, typically not binding, but you can get some kind of quote, you have to fill out, field after field of information. And yet all that information is inherently can be found in the Gerber files and the drill files. So what we do is we just basically just jump to the end. We do flat rate pricing. If you have a 1 square inch design, you get charged on a given rate for one square inch. For 6 of them is our minimum order quantity. It doesn't matter how many components you put on it. I mean, as long as you're not violating, pretty decent courtyard rules. But there's, it doesn't matter what you're doing with it. You can just do it. The price for the PCB and the assembly doesn't change.
Right, so it's getting rid of like a lot of the setup costs and stuff like that, right? Those are baked in at least.
Well, I think the more important thing is that it's not uncommon to say have a design and then you switch one component out and suddenly the price is radically different. from a given, because you've just tripped some evil, part of someone's, opaque pricing engine. So, if you change your design from QFP to QFN, there are some companies out there that'll double or triple your cost. We don't do that. If we support the part, it's the same price. That's it.
So what is the price right now?
The price is we're only doing quantity 6s right now because we're trying to solve the hard problem first. But the price on that is $8. I think it's $8 a square inch.
For 2-layer or 4?
For 2 and for 4-layer.
Okay.
But that's single sided. If you do double sided, there's an upcharge. But it's still a bargain.
Right.
Cool.
So the thing is you can get, it's possible to get fully assembled PCBs, a batch of them for under $100 with our system.
That's good.
How big a pain is a double-sided load as opposed to a single-sided?
Well,
is it just annoying, or is it?
It really depends, that's a really good question because it actually harkens back to something we were talking about before, which is confounding user tricks. The thing is that people will do double-sided. Typically, a double-sided design is not any more difficult than a single-sided design, except for the fact that you're doing.
You have to do a second pass.
You have to do a second pass, yeah.
And all the first pass ones have to stay on the board.
Well, that's actually not that big a problem.
Well, it is if you don't.
The surface tension will usually keep them on there.
Usually, that's the problem, right? I mean, there are qualifications on that, right?
Well, there are certain ratios where surface tension is going to keep it in place.
Yeah.
And so there are also certain things where you need to, take some action to make sure it stays in place. But the real issue is when people pick components that have no business being on the backside. Because
you mean my 800 pin BGA shouldn't be on the backside? Is that right?
Well, that's actually not. Well, honestly, that's not as big a problem as you think. The problem is when people. What we found is interesting behavior when. There are certain parts that always show up on every design, no matter what. So, there's a certain coin cell holder that is the cheapest first one that you find on DigiKey that everybody uses. And
you have that one.
Okay, and the issue with that is that it's really unrealistic to put it on the back because it has tiny little feet, so it doesn't have the surface area. It's heavy, and to make matters worse, there's no part of that component that you can stake down because it doesn't have any flat surfaces at all, and so it's designed only for top placement, and that's it. And that's, now of course you can do things in reverse where you do the top and then the bottom. But for certain designs, that's not feasible either because you may start to get into yield issues because.
Well, that also sounds like a human thing. That sounds like it's counter to your entire process of that sounds like a human in the loop kind of thing, right?
Well, those are one of the things that kind of, it's one of the challenges that we're going to be fixing. How to effectively detect that part and say, yeah, you can't have that there. You can't.
Well, it seems like one of the main things that you guys are doing is basically you're saying, look, here's what we do. Here's what our rules are. There is really good pricing if you do it. If not, maybe we're not the place for you. Does that sound right?
That is 100% on the money, and that's another alien notion to most assemblers out there. Most assemblers will do anything you want. If you say
no, just quote them a price.
If you say, hey, we want you to do reflow while you're standing on your head, sure, no problem. So
as you wish.
We do what we call the anti-Burger King philosophy, have it our way. And that's not for everybody, but what's interesting is it's for a lot of people. If you're going to an assembler where they'll do anything you want at any time, that means every job they do is a bespoke job. And that also means that a really simple meat and potatoes job carries the cost of a really complex job.
Yep,
some of it.
Right.
Correct.
Okay, so what we say is, hey, we only do it one way, so you're paying a much lower price because you're not subsidizing somebody's, complicated design that requires a lot of care and feeding. And
the other manufacturers aren't transparent in this. They will simply just do it. They won't go, oh, this is difficult and we're going to have to charge you extra. They will simply just do it and you won't know that you're being charged extra for this. They'll simply just quote you on that,
No, but that's the thing. That's the thing. You are being charged extra every single time.
Oh, yes, you are, but they won't tell you, so you don't realize.
No, but here's the thing. Even if you have a real piece of cake job, there's the underlying assumption in their pricing model that you're going to be a problem child.
Correct. Yes. Right. Yeah.
So, we say...
But they don't tell you any of that. That's the thing. You don't realize that they're charging, that they're thinking that every job's a, custom, bespoke
I remember
thing.
when I used to work at a place that I used to live near. I won't say which one, but everybody knows what it is. We had actually a spreadsheet where we were trying to optimize the cost of a board, and even with in-house manufacturing, we didn't know how their pricing structure was. Like, basically, we tried to say, oh, well, what if we made the stuff BGA instead of QFP? Didn't matter. We'd still have to get it all quoted through, right? Or if we, put everything only on the front side, didn't matter. You still had to put it through. Like, and that was even with in-house manufacturing. When you go to outside assembly, all bets are off because, like you said, all the pricing models are opaque. Well,
and on top of that, what you'll notice is there are what I like to do is, obviously we look at competition, and what I like to do is give them, improbable use cases to see what it does to their pricing engine if they have something. Right. So one of the things is that, the first thing that I'll always do is basically give them the same specs for double-sided and single-sided. Same number of placements, same this, same that. And what I typically find is the difference between single-sided and double-sided placement is about 10%. So,
really,
it shouldn't, it's usually not that great. There's not a huge savings by keeping it single-sided with most vendors. The other thing that I like to do is to take a certain part that I know is probably going to, be a tripwire part for them and see just, what multiple the price goes to. So, let's add a 4-ball BGA and see what happens. Or let's add a QFN, some other, BTC and see what happens. So it's always an interesting thing. To see how those price models kind of break down. And they typically do. We decided to just go with perfect transparency. It's really very self-serving in one sense, that if word gets out about what we're doing, we become the pricing model that everyone carries around in their head.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So when
it's the price to beat, right? It's like, especially if you have the convenience piece of, I don't have to talk to a human, right? It's like, great, awesome.
I think the other thing is when you add some of the other features, like, as we start to roll out what we call the fail-proofing features, I think that's something that people come to appreciate. But ultimately, it's not just a price. It's not a price thing. If you look at why people say shop on Amazon, it's not because it's the cheapest price, because it rarely is.
Because Amazon Prime.
Well, people shop on Amazon because they know they're getting something that's pretty close to the lowest price for everything. They don't need to think about it. And so, comparative shopping, it stinks. And it's actually worse in this industry because you can't send the same file set to every vendor.
Mm-hmm. Apples to apples is really tough.
Yeah, it is. Or they need things in a different way, so you're sending it to all these different folks, and it's like, okay, I got to make this for this vendor A, another package for vendor B. It's a nightmare.
Yeah. Interesting. Well,
tell us about pick and place machines.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how the hell are you doing this?
So here's the thing. Most so it's interesting. Pick and place machines are basically, in a nutshell, the problem with pick and place machines is that they're typically designed to have really great specs, but those specs are geared towards the wrong problem. So
how so?
Well, the thing is that if you go to buy a pick and place machine, they will tell you how many part components per hour that machine can place. And that sounds really great. Oh, it's like that one does 12,000 an hour, that one does 8,000, 12,000 is better. What they're not doing is how many unmonitored components an hour it can place.
But it's the baked-in assumption is that there's a person, an operator there that's a specialist.
Well, it's even worse than that. We always ask the simple question of most vendors, and we said, "Tell us about your error rates," and nobody could answer. They don't measure them.
How do you qualify that or quantify that rather?
Well, just in any way. Like, in other words, how many mispicks do you have for a given component type? Okay, per million, per thousand, whatever. They don't measure that. They don't measure it.
They probably do. They just don't tell you.
Well, I guess
We're
what I'm
not putting that in a
saying.
brochure. You know?
I guess what I'm saying is that I would actually say that from the responses that we got, they were befuddled. You know, when the salesperson stops talking, they usually means that like they've never had the question before.
Right. Yeah.
So that's issue number one. They don't understand that it's better to have a slow machine that never that could be run unattended versus a fast machine that needs to be constantly babied or has unexpected, issues. So that's one problem. The second problem is, and when we were talking earlier, you know, how many pick and place machine vendors did we talk to? And I said the answer was all of them. Most of them, and that wasn't as bad as it sounds, because most of them we kind of cross off the list in a 15-minute conversation. And the reason why that happened in a 15-minute conversation is because we'd start out and say, great, we want you to document certain things. Like, we want to know about how are you storing data on the back end of your machine.
whoa there, buddy. You deliver your data on a floppy drive or floppy disk, and you shove it in the machine, and then it does the thing.
Well, we're in a blindfold.
Yeah, exactly.
So the thing is that what we soon discovered is that if you go to most lines at most places, the data is effectively siloed and destroyed between each station that your job goes to. So your inspection machine is not talking to your pick and place machine. You know, it's not working from the same data set. And in many cases, the data is effectively being recreated at that station manually and then used again, which is not the way it's supposed to be. But in terms of just back-end storage, what we found is most people didn't really want to talk about it for one of two reasons. In some cases, they felt that they had some proprietary rocket science that if they told us about, their market share would collapse.
I figured it would be that they said back-end storage. You mean the Pentium 4 computer we shoved in the bottom of this thing? We make machines. We're machinists, man.
Well, we had one vendor that, like, you know, we were talking to a representative from one vendor, and they obviously didn't know the way things are supposed to work because they were remarkably candid. They were telling us everything we wanted to know, and so we're, you know, I'm not going to name the vendor. They had and I'll say the mechanical engineering on this machine was impeccable, and so we're talking about the software backend, and I said, so how do you store the data? And they're like, well, for certain data, it's in text files. And I said, okay. And then in certain data, it's in, you know, MDB database files. And for certain data, it's in XML files. And I said, okay. And I said to the rep, I said, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to guess that you've had 3 major revisions of your software. And yes, in fact, that was the case.
I love it.
So the thing is that the reason why they don't want to talk about it very often is because they're embarrassed. They know that it's not a good thing to know. Yeah. I mean, too many of these machines are running. Their data is being stored in a file on a file system, and that's you know, only one process can get to it at a time. If you try and, like, you know, access it externally, you're going to corrupt the file, and on and on and on. All the limitations of Windows file sharing.
It sounds like mostly that's machine makers don't necessarily have software engineers working there, right? Because it's just wasn't a big deal.
I just think that it's not something that they, you know, it's not something they've had to deal with. I mean, you look at a lot of other industries, and it's like, okay, there was once a time when every, you know, computer printer had its own page description language, so to speak. You know, I remember, like, the big deal. I mean, back in the day when I was a kid, you know, Epson MX80 compatibility.
Oh,
kind of dating myself. But the thing is that, you know, every machine had its own way of, you know, its own protocol, it's whatever. And so then eventually you started to get, you know, HP and Adobe kind of help fix that. That doesn't exist in this industry at all. That notion of it. It's like, it's a black box, and there's no reason for you to ever pierce the black box. And if you are, you're a troublemaker, and we don't want to talk to you. But
so how did you end up buying a pick and place machine?
we built one.
So no.
Some people say, I know, but I'm just saying some people would say that.
You manufacturing terrorist, you. How did you manage to get that?
We found 2 vendors who actually were pretty open and Rational. For one of those vendors, their format was completely self-documenting, and it was just a question of, looking at their formats, and bam, it was a piece of cake. And so, that went very high up on our list. I'll put it to you that way.
Gotcha.
So, but that's like, it's amazing because, they don't like they don't like us. I mean, they really don't like us.
Right.
When you said we talked to all of them, can you give us a rough idea of how many are even out there? I don't really have an idea.
It tends to vary because, like for instance, I mean, I think at least at one point, and then maybe still, there's effectively 2 different Yamaha lines of machines. And then Samsung, some of their machines at least got spun up into another subsidiary. But, when I was in Munich in November at Productronica, I would say there's probably between 20 and 30 vendors.
Okay.
I mean, right. which seems like a lot, right? I mean, you wouldn't think so, but it's really more a function of just how massive the electronics industry is in aggregate.
Yep.
Right.
So,
are you allowed to name which one you went with?
We're not addressing that at this time. And part of the reason is because we don't necessarily want to reward that vendor at this point because
right, the verdict's still out. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing that's interesting is that, I mean, again, and this was a culture clash. So we get the machine and we start finding some pretty horrendous bugs. Now, I'm guessing that probably every pick and place machine suffers from the same kind of bugs that we found, or at least to some degree.
Very likely, yep.
But the thing is, so what we would do is we would write them bug reports. I mean, a pretty standard bug report. If you do this, you will get this unwanted behavior, so you could reproduce it. And this is what needs to be addressed. And we would send it to them. And their developers would get furious. They would get,
wow, how dare you, sir?
And the thing is that we literally got to the point with them where we gave them, again, a bug report. This is probably the 20th or 25th bug report we gave them, and the developer that was fielding it just simply said, "I can't reproduce it," and it was complete bullshit. There was no question in my mind that he could probably reproduce it every single time, but I just think he got fed up that somebody was calling them on their maybe not best of breed programming skills. And so that's, I mean, to this day, we're still discovering new bugs that probably existed for the last year we've been using the machines, but we only finally figured out how to reproduce the bug. Recently.
Right. Yep.
So why did you need this kind of software backend in the first place? I mean, are you using that for something or what?
Oh, absolutely. When someone creates an order on our system, our software automatically assigns it to a panel set. Our software automatically does the arraying, it does the tab routing automagically, and then what it does is it actually does, it basically, after it's created that panel set, it takes that panel set and delivers it to our machine automatically as a recipe.
Sweet.
And so there's no operator sitting there and doing traditional teaching for most of the setup. And we're increasing that automation more and more. So the old rule of thumb that we've heard, it's never been substantiated, but it seems to be accurate, is that the average assembly job takes about 8 hours of setup. No matter.
Yes, that's about right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we've got that average down below 2.
Nice.
And we have a roadmap to get it below 15 minutes.
Nice.
So,
excellent.
So the thing is that the only way we can, I'll put it to you this way. I'm the only production employee of PCBNJ. We don't have more than one. It's just me. I'll make the developers occasionally do production jobs so that they can just understand what the eventual production staff is going to be dealing with. But ultimately, we have a very low headcount and a very low labor footprint to do what we're doing. And that's the only way. And I think it's the only way the industry can survive. And I think they need to be pulled kicking and screaming to adopt a lot of this. And in their typical manner, they are starting to adopt it, but they're doing it in like a really bizarre, strange way. So,
like?
There's something called, I think it's OML. It's a markup language for assembly production, and it's a good start. I think Valor is leading the charge on that. But the problem that they're getting into is that one of the things that Valor had to do is kind of make a lowest common denominator language, because they need to support machines that you can't talk to at all. And in fact, one of the things Valor did was introduce a line of industrial Internet of Things devices that
Wi-Fi dongles that plug into parallel ports.
That turn actually will turn the dials or be able to read from an analog sensor.
Wow.
And that's just not a good idea. And that's the other issue with the industry, is that the average lifespan of a pick and place machine is at least 10 years.
No, at least, yeah.
Yeah.
And and there are some machines out there that keep on, if you look at and I'm not saying anything bad about the brand, but if you look at Universals, they keep on being refurbed and refurbed and refurbed. I don't even know if Universal exists anymore. So those machines out there are routinely 20 years old, and they're still very capable machines, but you're not going to be able to drive them from an external software process.
So you mentioned 2-hour setup time now. One of the things that is traditionally in setup is like reels and loading up reels and stuff like that. How do you guys deal with that?
Well, this is probably something we don't entirely want to talk about, but what I will say is that if you're doing, if you're delivering 6 boards, it really doesn't make sense to put reels on the machine at all.
Okay.
So we've developed our own system of part handling, so that we're not dealing with tape and if you're using a Micronic, tape and reels are not so painful. For everyone else, they're a little bit they can be a little bit painful, but we don't use tape and reel at all, and so that actually gives us a much faster setup time.
Well, that makes sense for the way that a lot of these boards are going to be ordering parts anyways, right? Like when I'm hand assembling, I'm only ordering, maybe 10-20% extra for what I need. And I don't want to, be buying huge reels for production, even though that there is going to be a benefit to do that cost wise over time. So makes sense.
Well, for passive, if you're doing a short run for passives, you're probably going to get hit by most assemblers anywhere from 50 to 200% overage for the passives. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's a huge amount. Sometimes they will bill you for every a 10K resistor that spills on the floor when they take that reel off the shelf and load it on the machine. Right. So it's funny because we were actually talking about this in the shop, and one of the things that you see in a mature industry, and it's not necessarily a good thing always, but take for instance food service. Eventually when you can't sell bricks of cheese at a premium anymore, you find you go to the convenience packaging and you end up with individually wrapped cheese slices, which is not necessarily great for the environment, but it's great for convenience and it's great for someone's profit margin. It's always made me wonder why exactly it is the component manufacturers. Now, we're moving into a long tail world. People want shorter runs. They want stuff that's more customized to their lifestyle. It would seem that it would be logical that the component manufacturers would come up with the equivalent of the individually wrapped cheese slice for components. Something that is really optimized for short runs. And
isn't that called a cut tape?
Well, no, it's not actually, because cut tape is probably the worst thing that you could use for a short run, because cut tape is a disaster.
Although there are pick and place machines that do support them, you stick them down inside the machine and they will actually handle those fairly decently. My local assembler has a machine that handles the cut tape,
and that's absolutely true. But the issue comes down to, for most machines, is actually just the logistics of getting that part in the machine with the cover tape off and not, basically making a mess. And that's actually a really, really tough thing to solve. Now, there are other machines that have what look like truncated tape and reel feeders where you can give them cut tape. Those typically don't work particularly well. I'm sure that there are probably some out there that aren't so bad, but in general, they don't work all that great. So cut tape is really problematic. But what I would say is that I can't believe it's beyond the capabilities of any of these component makers to come up with a new packaging paradigm for, say, 100, ceramic caps that isn't cut tape. That
right,
is
charge
not
a
going
premium for it. You're saying like stuff
well,
like that.
sure, because the thing is I think people would pay that premium. They'd love to. Sure.
I
But
totally
is there
would.
enough market out there for them? Because the manufacturers, they're really concerned with the volume market. What's this, tens and 20s crap?
Well,
that's from a packaging point of view.
Well,
would it sell? I don't know.
Dave, it's interesting that you say that because if you look at the the research, say from the IPC, what you'll find is now the vast majority of the spoils are going overseas. The thing is that if you look at the American market for assembled electronics, probably the entire market is worth about per year between $34 $36 billion for just a la carte assembled electronics.
Okay.
And if you look at the quantities, the biggest quantity, the biggest segment of that market is for quantity 1 to 100.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the second one, basically, as you move up through the different breaks, the slice of the market goes way down. By the time you get over 1,000, you're probably at like 4% of the market.
Right.
So yeah, there is actually a massive amount of interest in smaller volumes, and we hear that from our users constantly. They don't want to buy it's interesting. They don't want to buy thousands. They want to buy dozens or hundreds. That's what they want to buy.
But is that enough? Is even that, you can wave that data in the component manufacturer's face. Are they going to care?
I think eventually they will. I think that again, as we, I think the world is changing, and there's just going to be less and less designs out there that someone's going to make 100,000 of or more. And so they're going to have to adapt to it eventually. I think the pick and place manufacturer is going to have to adapt to it eventually. We actually saw a new company, an Italian company. I can't remember who their name offhand, but they were introducing their first pick and place machine. And it was the first pick and place machine I'd ever seen that was designed inherently for short runs. And
how so? What made it?
Well, because again,
for short runs.
They were dealing with a lot of the issues they had mentioned. They were, for instance, instead of just using, a look up and a look down camera, I think they were using a total of 8 cameras. So they had multiple side lookers, and so that, they could, so mispicks were largely addressed just from that. Let's see what else they were doing. They actually had a really interesting and novel cut tape feeding system that I'd never seen before. They had what they called, they were trying to do some interesting stuff with machine vision to help reduce setup times, which is something we've never seen before. So, the fact that someone from a traditional industry said, "Oh, wow, maybe this is something that people need," it was very surprising to see it.
What would be really interesting is the people that have always benefited from the low volume stuff, or the price margin from the low volume, maybe not in aggregate overall, but like the ones who benefit are the distributors, right? So like I would think it would be like a DigiKey, a Mauser, an Arrow, an Avnet, one of those guys. They would have their own custom style of packaging. That would be the place to do it. If there was a place to do it, like basically they set up the contract, a new type of packaging with the packaging people, because like then you could.
But you got to talk to the manufacturer. The manufacturer has to supply the parts to them so that they can package them in their custom little thing.
If you supplied it in bulk and then you repackaged them, like there are repackagers, right? And even if you look at how DigiKey does DigiReels, that is technically sort of a repackaging, but not really.
It is.
But you could move into a whole new paradigm of packaging, and then make that its own thing.
When we were in our research phase, we actually came across an assembly line out west where they were doing repackaging for some pretty odd components, just for that reason. Not necessarily for short runs, but just to make it more manufacturable. And it was great to see these these 5-axis robot arms, picking up parts and putting them into custom trays that they had machined out with CNC.
Fancy.
So, no, it was definitely overkill, but it was awesome. But
Yeah.
I think that you're going to see more and more of that kind of thing. It's going to happen at some part in the supply chain where someone's going to deal with that logistical issue. It would make perfect sense for a DigiKey to say, you know what, we're going to basically automate this system where we're derailing resistors and putting them in a Digitray. That would be really, really smart. But
Hint, hint.
I'm just saying. I wouldn't get your hopes up.
Well, there's a lot of cost to that kind of process, and with no guarantees. But yeah, that
I
would
think
be
so.
interesting.
I think so, but I think the trends are pretty obvious, and I think that it's going to be look. Eventually, it's going to be required anyway. If any of these desktop solutions actually becomes somewhat more workable, you're going to need it just for that.
Yep.
So. If someone actually does deliver a below $5,000 pick and place machine that really, really works, it's not going to probably be big enough or, have the structural integrity to hold, 10,000 components on a big reel.
Yeah. Dave, did you ever assemble yours? Did you ever put yours together?
No, it's still in kit
Stone
form.
boxes. That's fine. Like we've talked about a lot. I mean, we talk about this on the show a lot, right? It's like it still really isn't a need. I mean, there is a need sometimes. Like some of the people we've had on the show have used these lower volume ones, and some people like them. But you need to, there's still that crossover point of where you need it versus the cost and the hassle of getting one set up. So you and I are both out there.
I think that ultimately, at this point, from what I've seen, you're not going to find, to my mind, and I'm not being a snob, but I think that you're just simply not going to find a viable pick and place machine that's equipped well enough to be dangerous for under about $50K.
I don't think either. Well, wow. I wouldn't say 50K, but 10 or 20. Like I'm pretty sure the magic 5K sub 5K very capable home pick and place machine is not going to happen.
No. I don't think so either, but I mean, it was funny because again, at Productronica, there were two vendors showing 10 to 20K pick and place machines. And they were great, except for the fact they didn't work.
But they had nice colors.
Well, I mean, the thing is that probably if you ran them really, really slowly, they would probably work most of the time. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to use stepper motors to do things that you really need a closed loop system for. Mm-hmm. And that is really the issue, is that it's hard to have a good pick and place machine if you don't have a very accurate, using very good encoders or some other methodology, and those cost a lot of money. So and they're not going to get cheaper anytime soon. So that's it. And
it's also it's not just a matter of cost and capability. It's a matter of hassle and payback and things like that.
Right.
Having that personal pick and place machine, you got to learn how to use it. You got to massage it. You've got to, you're better off
it, right?
using.
You gotta be there.
You're better off just paying a company like yours to do it.
Well, we think so. But,
who's doing this every day? I mean, if you've got a small pick and place machine, you're not going to use it every day. You may not use it for 6 months, and then you'll go, "Oh, I've got to use it," and then,
Well, actually, so this is a good topic too. It's probably to end on as well. But one of the reasons people always give, and that you and I have talked about before, Dave, is the lead time stuff, right? So
of course,
like I want it because I need to be able to turn it around quickly. So what is the lead time that you guys have right now, John?
Well, I mean, what we are trying to do, and we're getting closer to hit this regularly, is a 12 calendar day turn. And notice that I said calendar day, because one of our peeves is working days, because that tends to get redefined when you're irritated that your stuff is late.
Could
you explain the difference? Sorry, so like working days, like business days, basically.
Well, business days. And so the thing is that, and the biggest trick that always happens is that, your stuff is late and they have some kind of a guarantee, and then you're like, okay, where's my stuff? And they're like, oh, no. We got your stuff on day 0. Day 1 started, love that.
And day 4 was a holiday, of course. There was a bank holiday in Malaysia, but, we count those. Those are bank holidays. Those are holidays.
Exactly. So we make it really simple. We just call it 12 calendar days, which is actually fairly aggressive compared to what's out there, especially at our price point. It's possible that may have to be adjusted, but I think we're going to be able to, especially once volume starts to ramp, really hit that pretty easily. The real issue comes down to is that if you try and do it faster, you're paying, unless you're so vertically integrated that you own your own board house, you start to incur some pretty substantial costs in expedite fees.
Oh yeah, right.
And so, and the thing is, the board houses, they do not work on calendar days; they work on working days. So that's part of the issue. We're finding ways around that, but we think that 12 calendar days is kind of the happy medium between it's fast enough, especially at that price. I would love to get it down, but it's just that may or may not happen. We just have to see. But so far, people are pretty happy with the notion of 12 calendar days.
Sweet. Now, you've mentioned just quickly before we finish up, you've mentioned that you had like a research phase and then you had to build all this complex software and automation and everything else. This must have taken a year or two. Where's your funding coming from? Have you got venture backing, or it's like how do you survive? Because I can imagine it's a huge amount of effort before you can actually take the first customer's order, before you actually get income.
Man, that is a major bunch of worms there. But so just to give you the quick chronology, I started researching this 3 years ago. Actually, it's probably at this point, it's actually closer to 4 years ago.
Right. So as a side thing, while you're
as a side thing. I needed to get a lot of education, and so it wasn't, we weren't playing beat the clock at that point. But we actually incorporated officially in December 2014. And it took us from December 2014, believe it or not, till June 2015 to actually be in a space with equipment and crates. So
that doesn't surprise me at all. No.
Yeah. Well, but again, investors just don't understand. And so we are currently funded by a bunch of nice angels.
Excellent.
And the thing is that doing a manufacturing startup, the issue, and I think that there are probably other people that are going to be listening to this and nodding their heads, is that you don't follow the same growth curves as other companies.
No.
You're not gonna, you'll be talking to someone and they'll be like, oh, I'd be interested in investing in your company, but I need to see X dollars per month. And it's like, well, it doesn't work that way in manufacturing.
You're not a unicorn. Get out of here.
Well, I think that honestly, there's the potential for someone that is Summit Electronics to be a unicorn. I do believe that, but because I think that once you get to the point where anybody can make electronics, where school kids can make electronics, where you can easily make Christmas ornaments, it opens up a lot of interesting ideas. But in terms of investors, it's a tricky thing because they don't understand that you're working on different metrics, that you're working on maybe a different time frame, and not necessarily a bad one, but just not necessarily the one that they're used to, especially with, dating, social dating for greyhounds or whatever they're investing in typically.
I love that app.
And the other thing is that they really hate it when they're investing in money and you're saying, and we're going to make this big ass capital expenditure. Oh man, they really hate that. So
right. They'd rather you slowly give it to software engineers over time.
Right.
John, let's be honest here. Let's get down to brass tacks. You funded this entire thing yourself by selling Pico paste press, didn't you?
This is a good place to end.
We didn't bring that up, but I do still use mine and I enjoy it. So
well, the funny thing is that there was a pivotal moment in the paste press when I sent one to Australia for a certain person to review. And the thing is that, when you do that, you realize that I can live and die on what's about to happen. And
Detective Dave, is that what I'm hearing?
And I'll never forget. Well, first of all, no, let me finish the story. But there was this certain panic when Dave started to, berate the product. And then magically he's like, oh, this is how it works. This is great. And I was like, yes. And so Dave, you really, you gave me a very nice Christmas that year. So thank you.
Fantastic. No, you're welcome.
You don't sell it anymore though. What the hell, man?
you'd be amazed at how much time it takes to support even, something that's really just a miniature caulking gun at the end of the day.
I wasn't going to say anything.
And people really get very demanding of your time because they bought a
internet connected. I wanted to Wi-Fi pipe press
because they bought a $40 item. They're just like, they get really demanding. And the worst part is that ultimately the product, what I found was that the problem that a lot of people were having with it was that they were using a certain brand of solder paste. And so there's a certain very well-known brand that is infused with air bubbles. And so, unlike every other brand, and that's probably the reason why it's so inexpensive. And as a result, people would get crappy results because the stuff would start to compress, which it's not supposed to do. And that would cause weird, if you have caulk that's infused with air bubbles, you're probably going to have a really hard time dispensing that. So it was just better to get out of Dodge entirely and focus on making it so that people didn't need to use a paste press anymore.
Gotcha. Good. Yeah, actually, I guess you are trying to solve that in a different way, right?
Indeed.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you for being on here. So remind people again, what is the code that they can use to get an instant beta access?
So if folks go to pcb.ng, which is printed circuit board next generation, so pcb.ng, and go to redeem invite code. If they use the code TheAmpHour, enter their email address, enter a desired password, you're in the beta. Don't have to wait for an invite. Don't have to wait for us to.
I can verify it worked. I was straight in.
Yeah.
Yes.
There you go.
Minute,
And you can get the
banned.
dollar per square inch.
Yep, straight away you start getting
boards.
your quotes, you upload your Gerbers, and you're in like Flynn.
And we're doing the really like stupid cheap blank PCB bare PCBs only during beta. Because it's just, like I say, it's just a way for us to really exercise our Gerber parser and make it so that we're not screwing up on Dave again in the future. But it's
Don't base your businesses around him. That's not a good idea.
Hey man, we want Dave and everyone else to get it right the first time every time. So if it doesn't work, it's our fault. That's our motto. So great opportunity for folks, and great way to get your stuff assembled as well.
Fantastic.
Guys, thank
you
so
very
much.
much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been awesome.
Thanks, John.
Talk to you guys
Talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
Catch you next time.
Bye.